Question 4, he says, actually, the question I intended was, how do they get here? By what means of moving? So you see, moving in distance, in space-time. And so Ra offers this explanation and say, in the mechanism of the calling, the movement is as you would expect. That is, the entities are within your planetary influence and are, having come through the quarantine web, free to answer such calling. So, in the specific mechanism of the calling, right, the movement is as we would think. They must be present, right, in the influence, the sphere of influence, which is the planet here. So, again, because they are here, they can answer the call. That's basically what they're saying. They don't need to move. Like we would say, I'm going to Europe, or I'm going to Russia, or Japan, or Indonesia, or whatever. It's not that type of space movement, that transportation, but rather there is more work in consciousness, in mind. Fourth density particularly is starting to learn these ways, because that's what they learn to move to fifth density. So the entities are here, and I think they're talking about the fourth density entities, that they need to be here. Like I said, the other ones are working from their own density, the fifth density negative entity. So that's the first thing that we need to establish. There is no such thing as needing to move, although fourth density needs to move in a different way than fifth density, but let's not complicate that. The point is that it's not as our human physical form travels, if that makes sense. They go on to explain that temptations are offered by those negative entities of what you would call your inner planes. These, shall we say, dark angels, have been impressed by the service to self path offered by those which have come through quarantine from days of old. And these entities, much like your angelic presences of the positive nature, are ready to move in thought within the inner planes of this planetary influence, working from time-space to space-time. So that last part, when they say working from time-space to space-time, is in essence what I said about working from consciousness or mind, not space-time. For those of you who don't know, space-time refers to the physical realm, this material, 3 dimensions of space, 1 of time, and time-space is related to metaphysic or mind, where we move in 3 directions of time, past, present, future, in only 1 space, which is the now. So that's the difference between the two, basically mind and body. Body being space-time, mind being time-space. So, a lot to get into this paragraph, actually. They say that the temptations that are offered by those negative entities, those would be fourth density. I don't think they say it here, but that's what they're talking about. I mean, they don't say fourth density, but we have learned so far that temptations are offered by fourth density primarily. So they're offered. How are they offered? That's the question, right? So there are 4 density entities, negative entities from other planets, and they're doing their work. How do they do it? It's interesting how they explain here. They call them dark angels. I love that. So dark angels have been impressed by the service to other self. Actually, dark angels are not the negative entities of fourth density. This is a whole different topic, and I'm only going to summarize it. But yeah, let me show you the diagram that I have in my mind. Recently, actually, I was talking to Julie, my wife, about how angels work and what are angels. And I just gave her my explanation of what this means to me. You see, the way we describe angels has always varied from culture to culture, and yet all of them speak of angels, and then they speak of demons. What are we to make out of all of this? Well, if there's one thing that is common across all cultures, is that angels are known to be positive beings, or always eliciting some sort of inspirational, motivational, enlightening experience, where demons are doing the opposite. So if we can just regularize this by saying positive experiences, negative experiences, then we know that there are streams of thought at different levels and intensities that vary in the experience of life. Yeah? So if this is the experience of life, it's either positive or negative. That's how our mind runs, right? It wants certain things and it finds them pleasurable, good, and so on. And then there are undesirable experiences. So those are positive and negative experiences. And the whole dynamic for the negative entities is to manipulate you, to make you feel good in a certain way, that it's always taxing, because they're taking that energy, that creative energy of you, so for their own purposes, because the negative entity is void inside. It doesn't have a heart, or at least it does, but it's not using it. So the negative entity, that's the way it works. Through the let's say this mechanic, I'm going to call it mechanic again, of positive and negative, then we call them angelic beings. Yes, presences, positive and negatives. These are under the influence of the planetary sphere. Again, if we go back to the model, and I apologize for the new viewers who may be listening to this, but this is the model of the law of one. Within the model of the law of one, we have densities. So we have first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh densities. We are living, or we are experiencing, third density. Now, third density has 7 sub-densities, which are related to the energy centers or chakras. My model, my mental model of angelic and demonic beings, is that these beings within the planetary sphere are in the sub-densities. So we experience angels in these. That doesn't mean that there doesn't exist in other densities, because it's holographic. But at least, as Ra is explaining here, I just want you to become aware or visualize the possibility that these beings are within the energy system, right? And so clearly a frequency of the heart is always angelic, whereas a frequency in the lower energy centers may be negative, or it doesn't necessarily has to be, but it's drawing you there. There might be an influence there, and Ra gives a sort of hint to that here. In big caveat, this is my interpretation again, but I think there's a hint in here that I'll explain. But that's the whole dynamic, right? There are densities of consciousness, and then within this third density consciousness, we are having the experience of positive and negative. And those positive and negative experiences are influenced by the streams of thoughts that exist. Some are positive, some are negative. Now, how do the 4 density entities come in play here? Well, recall that there are 4 density entities in their own right, in their own home, let's say. And how they do the work is what Ra explains here. Ra says, dark angels have been impressed by the service to self path offered by those which have come through quarantine from days of old. So those who have come through the quarantine in antiquity, right? That's what they're saying. From days of old, in antiquity, they have been coming and influencing the angels, or these sub-densities have been impressed with negative Orion influence, let's call it. Orion being the negative entities. So this creates a sort of dark angel impression. You see, that's the hint that I see here, that I believe this has been, they don't necessarily have to be negative, but they have been impressed that way. So it's almost like we have that egregor, right? Is that the word that we use in English too for this thought form that is agreed upon by the majority or a big part of the population? So that's it. You see, this is almost like, think about it as a sort of virus that has been installed in the system of third density in planet Earth. That's how the fourth density have created their influence in this stream of thoughts which are negative. And it's sort of like they're creating their own dystopian metaphysical reality here, if that makes sense. But the same thing is happening from fourth density positive ones. So again, it's a matter of intensifying the streams of light and darkness for us to make the choice. I could spend easily an hour or two talking about this because there's so much to explain. But that's the best way I can summarize it. Now, what else do they say? These entities, much like your angelic presences of the positive nature, are ready to move in thought within the inner planes. They're talking about the dark angels. They're ready to move in thought, right? That's how we get influence. That's how we pick up this signal. And that signal is, I want something positive for others. I want to be service to others, or I want something for myself. I want to be selfish. Selfish or selfless. It's not only that, but I'm giving an example. And so how do they move in thought? Through time-space to space-time. So I wish I could draw this in the board there, but there is the fourth density entity influencing for thousands of years the inner planes, right? The subdensities. And those subdensities are simply sort of like rivers of thoughts that exist for our mind to pick up. And our minds pick them up and say, yes, I like this temptation. I mean, we don't say this consciously, but the mind does get, attracted to this type of thought, negative thought patterns. And it moves there. Or it does the opposite on the positive one. So that's the whole structure. There is the higher densities influencing the inner planes. The inner planes are the source of thought, and we are the decoding aspect of reality. We are the experiencer, the creator, or at least that part of the creator that is experiencing itself as this particular form. Again, I feel like I have truncated so much in this explanation that I won't even apologize, because otherwise I'll spend the whole session here. Let's go on with now how fifth density communicates or does its work. Ross says, the mechanism of the fifth density entity is from density to density and is magical in nature. The fourth density of itself is not capable of building the highway into the energy web. However, it is capable of using that which has been left intact. These entities are, again, the Orion of fourth density. So explaining again now the densities, we now go to a higher density, fifth density. This is what I called working from home, right, remotely, because they do their work from fifth density. That's why Ross says they do their work from density to density and is magical in nature. Why is it magical? Fourth density seems magical to me. They're working through the inner planes. Well, they're using to my understanding, they're using the word magical as we have defined it in the past as doing changes in consciousness at will. There is a much more powerful use of light and consciousness, light being intelligent energy, that which creates in fifth density. That's what they're training, right, in fifth density. And so there is a greater capacity for manipulation. Now, they do create these sort of avenues, as Rock calls them, canals, if you will, in which these workings can be done. The fourth density is not capable of building these highways or canals, I would say, into the energy web. But they are capable of using the roads that have been paved by fifth density, I would think. So these entities are the Orion entities, and they are from fourth density, the ones that are able to use these canals. So again, the type of work that fifth density entities do is a little bit more complex, but it's not explained here. I won't go into the details. But they work together, of course. The fourth density are the minions of fifth density. They do their bidding, and yeah, that's even another layer of complexity into how this reality is fed more and more possibilities for experiencing both polarities to a degree that is novel to the creator. I know, I am aware that this topic may be raising a lot of goosebumps because we're talking about negative entities, and I, for one, have been unaffected by this for a while, but I do understand that there is some sort of consideration and concern about the, not being affected by negative entities and so on. So I'll just say that is your choosing, your conscious choosing to realize how your behavior is being influenced. Is it being influenced by that which is natural in you, or is it being influenced by thought patterns that are not you? That I leave obviously to the individual, but that's how you refine basically your own being, and you make the choice. You have to choose one or the other stream of thought, positive or negative. And that's beyond the scope of this episode, but and it goes into self-realization and so on, but I won't get into that.